My parents actually expected me to give up the master bedroom in the house that I'm the one paying for. Also, their favorite son could have it. Yeah, seriously. So, I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for about the past year, I've been living with my parents here in the city. Sounds pretty normal on the surface, right? Like one of those situations where someone had to move back home to save money or something. But that's not what this is at all. This isn't a couldn't afford rent, had to move back in kind of story. In reality, I'm the one who bought the house. The mortgage? That's all on me. Groceries, utilities, bills, every single expense gets covered by me. My parents don't contribute anything financially. Not a single cent. For a bit of context, my mom, Karen, who's 54, and my dad, Robert, who's 57, are both retired teachers. They'd been living out in the countryside for years, but once they stopped working, they decided they were done with that quiet lifestyle. They wanted something more lively, more going on. At least, that's how they explained it. And honestly, at the time, I didn't see a problem with it. I've got a solid job as a software engineer, I'm making good money, and being in the city actually made sense for my career anyway. On top of that, I figured it was a chance to help them out a bit. They raised me, supported me growing up. It felt like the normal, decent thing to do for family. So we all moved into this pretty nice 3-bedroom house in the city. It's not some crazy mansion or anything like that, but it's definitely a comfortable place. 3 bedrooms, a small backyard, and a living room big enough for everyone to hang out without feeling cramped. Since I'm the one paying for everything, I made it clear from the start that I'd be taking the master bedroom. It's got a walk-in closet and its own private bathroom, which, honestly, is a huge deal. Sharing a bathroom? Yeah, I'll pass on that every time. The second bedroom went to my parents, since they were living with me full-time. I turned the third bedroom into my home office because I work from home about 70% of the time, and I kept the fourth bedroom as a guest room for visiting family. Simple, straightforward. At first, everything actually worked out pretty well. My parents were happy just being in the city, and we all kind of fell into a comfortable routine. They did their thing, gardening, watching TV, just enjoying retirement. And I focused on my job, paid all the bills, and handled the house. And honestly, I didn't even mind covering everything. I make 6 figures, and they don't really have much coming in besides their pensions. Plus, it's family. You don't exactly charge your parents rent, you know? But then things took a turn, and I mean fast. Way faster than I expected. One morning at breakfast, my mom casually dropped this comment like it was no big deal at all. She goes, "You know, your brother Ethan and Chloe have been thinking about moving to the city. Things aren't going too great for them back home, and Chloe's pregnant now, so they could really use some help." At first, I didn't think much of it. My brother Ethan, who's 30, and his girlfriend Chloe, 25, have always kind of bounced from one situation to another. They're not exactly failing, but they're definitely not thriving either. And with Chloe being pregnant, that just complicated things even more. So I figured, okay, maybe they'll move to the city, get a small place, and try to get their lives together. But yeah, that's not what my mom had in mind. A few days later, she sat me down and, in this overly sweet, almost too innocent tone, said, "We invited Ethan and Chloe to come stay with us. Just for a little while, until they get back on their feet." Now, looking back, this is the moment where I probably should have seen everything coming. But I didn't. I just kind of went along with it, thinking, all right, maybe they'll crash here for a bit and then find their own place. What I didn't realize was that this was just the beginning of a complete mess. Because here's the thing, they didn't really ask me if I was okay with it. They told me after the invitation had already been made. I was still trying to process everything when, about a week later, Ethan and Chloe showed up at the front door with bags in hand, looking like they weren't planning on leaving anytime soon. And right away, it was obvious, they weren't treating this like a temporary stay. They acted like they'd moved in for good. Meanwhile, I could already feel the stress creeping in, because I'm the one paying for everything. Food, utilities, the mortgage, all of it. And now suddenly, I've got 2 extra adults to support. Nobody asked me if I was okay with that. They just settled in like it was completely normal. Now don't get me wrong, I love my brother. He's family. But Ethan has never been the most responsible guy. He's the type who constantly ends up in messy situations and then relies on someone else to bail him out. And Chloe, she's polite on the surface, sure. But there's this underlying sense of entitlement about her that really gets under my skin. Like just because she's pregnant, She expects everyone around her to treat her differently, like she deserves special treatment by default. And that's when things started getting weird. A couple of days after they moved in, Chloe began making these little comments. The kind that sound harmless, but you can tell there's something behind them. She'd say stuff like, "Wow, this place is so big. Must be a lot for you to keep clean all by yourself." Or, "I can't wait until the baby's here. We're going to need so much space for everything." At first, I brushed it off. But then came the moment that really set everything off. One evening, after I'd just wrapped up a long day of work, Ethan and Chloe pulled me aside and said they wanted to talk. And I'm thinking, all right, maybe they're going to thank me, maybe even apologize for taking up space and eating all the food without contributing. Yeah, no. Instead, Chloe, super casually, goes, "So, we've been thinking." And right there, I already knew I wasn't going to like what came next. Then she says, "It would just make more sense if we took the master bedroom." I just stared at her. Like, I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ethan jumps in, backing her up, saying, "We need more space. The baby's going to need a lot of stuff, and your room has the walk-in closet and the private bathroom. And just to be clear, I pay the entire mortgage. The house is in my name. I cover all the groceries. I've been supporting everyone under this roof without asking for anything in return. And now they're asking me to give up my own bedroom?" I was completely thrown off. For a second, I couldn't even respond. It was like the sheer audacity just hit me all at once. Eventually, I managed to say, "Why don't you just take the spare room? It's a good size, and it's already set up for guests." But Chloe immediately pushed back. "That room doesn't have a walk-in closet," she said, "and we're going to need more space for the baby." I just stood there for a few seconds, trying to keep myself calm. Then I said, as steady as I could, "I'm not giving up my room. You can take the spare room, or you can find somewhere else to stay." Ethan looked genuinely surprised that I wasn't just folding and giving in. But Chloe? She looked straight up offended. And right then, I knew. This situation wasn't going to end well. All right. After that awkward conversation where Ethan and Chloe straight up asked me to give up my room, I honestly thought, maybe, just maybe, they'd realize how insane that sounded and drop it. I mean, seriously, who asks the person paying the mortgage, buying all the groceries, and keeping the lights on to just hand over their room like that? But yeah, that's not what happened. Over the next couple of days, I started noticing little things that didn't sit right with me. For starters, Ethan and Chloe got way too comfortable, way too fast. They had their stuff spread all over the living room, shoes kicked off by the couch like they owned the place. And Chloe was already talking about where she was going to put baby furniture, like the whole house was theirs to plan out. I didn't say anything right away, but I could feel it building up inside me, that gut feeling that something was about to go very wrong. Then one day, I had to go into the office for a few hours. Normally I work from home, but sometimes I've got meetings I can't skip. So I head out, handle my stuff, and come back around lunchtime to grab something to eat. The second I walked through the door, something fell off. And then I saw it. My stuff, my personal stuff, was sitting out in the hallway. My clothes were piled up on the floor. My computer monitor was unplugged and just sitting there like someone had been in the middle of moving it. Right then, my heart started racing. Because I already knew what this meant, but I still had to see it with my own eyes. I walked down the hall, pushed open my bedroom door, and sure enough, there's Chloe, right in the middle of my room, packing up the last of my things. And the craziest part? She didn't even look surprised to see me. She just glanced over like, "Oh, hey, perfect timing, I'm almost done here." I couldn't believe it. "What the hell are you doing?" I snapped, probably louder than I meant to. But she stayed completely calm, like this was no big deal at all. "Your mom said we could start moving our things in here," she said. "The baby's coming soon, and we need the space." Just like that. Like it was completely normal. At that point, I could literally feel my blood boiling. My mom, who doesn't pay a single cent toward this house, thought she could just hand over my room without even talking to me? No, absolutely not. "No," I said, stepping further into the room. "You're not moving into my room. I already told you. You can take the guest room." Chloe didn't like that one bit. She crossed her arms and gave me this look, like I was the one being unreasonable. "The guest room is too small," she shot back. "And it doesn't have a closet. We need more space for the baby." Yeah, I wasn't entertaining that. "I don't care," I said. "You're not taking my room. I'm the one paying the mortgage." I pay for everything in this house. You and Ethan aren't contributing anything. If you need more space, you're free to find your own place." At that point, I was fully heated, and I could tell Chloe was getting worked up too, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. Still, she didn't back down. "Your mom said it was fine," she repeated, like that settled everything. And that's where I completely lost it. I turned around, walked out of the room, grabbed my phone, and called my mom, who, by the way, wasn't even home. The second she picked up, I didn't even let her say hello. "Mom, did you tell Ethan and Chloe they could move into my room?" There was this long pause on the other end, like she was scrambling for what to say. Then finally, she goes, "Well, I just thought it would be the best solution. They need the space, and you already have your office. It's not like you're using the room for much." I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious right now?" I snapped. "I pay the mortgage. I pay for the groceries. I pay all the bills, and you think it's okay for them to just take my room?" She tried to calm me down, saying it wasn't a big deal and that we're all family, but I was done hearing it. "I'm not giving them my room," I said. "And if they don't move their stuff out, they're going to have to find somewhere else to stay." By that point, Chloe must have heard me, because she came storming out of the room, absolutely furious. "You're seriously going to kick us out? With a baby on the way?" Right then, Ethan walked in too. He must have heard the yelling from outside, because he came in already looking pissed. "What's going on?" he demanded. So I laid it out straight. "What's going on is your wife thinks she can take over my room without even asking. And I'm telling both of you right now, that's not happening. You can stay in the guest room, or you can leave." Ethan didn't like that at all. He immediately got defensive, talking about how we're family and how I should be willing to make sacrifices. But at that point, I was way past being reasonable. "Sacrifices?" I shot back. "I'm already paying for this entire house. What are you contributing?" "Nothing. And now you think you can just move in and take over?" At that point, the argument got loud. Really loud. Neither side was backing down. My mom tried calling me again, but I ignored it. I wasn't in the mood to hear more excuses. Ethan kept going, saying I wasn't being fair, that they had a baby on the way, that family should stick together during tough times. But I'd had enough. I looked both of them dead in the eye and said, "You've got until the end of the day to get your stuff out of my room. And if you don't, I'll move it myself." Chloe stormed off and slammed the door so hard it shook the walls. Ethan just stood there, staring at me like I was the villain in all this. But honestly, I didn't care. There was no way I was letting them walk all over me in my own house, especially when I'm the one paying for everything. For the rest of the day, I stayed locked in my office, trying to cool off. I didn't want to see either of them, and I knew if I stepped out, it would just turn into another argument. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't over. They weren't going to just accept this and move on. And I had a feeling my mom was going to step in again. But I wasn't backing down either. Not this time. After that blow-up with Ethan and Chloe, I thought maybe they'd finally get the message. I'd made it crystal clear, my room was off limits. They either stay in the guest room or find somewhere else to go. Simple enough, right? Yeah, not even close. The next day, I mostly kept to myself. I wasn't looking for more drama, and honestly, I was still pissed about everything that had happened. So I stayed in my office, buried myself in work, and tried to act like things were normal. But by the time dinner rolled around, you could feel the tension in the air. It felt like everyone was deliberately avoiding each other, just quietly stepping around the obvious tension hanging in the air. Honestly, I didn't mind the silence. If Ethan and Chloe were finally going to stay in the guest room and stop pushing things, I figured I could deal with that. But then something happened that completely pushed me over the edge. That evening, I walked into the kitchen to grab something to eat. Like always, I'd been the one who bought all the groceries. But the second I opened the fridge, I just froze. It was basically empty. And I'm not talking about stuff that had been sitting there for a while. I mean food I had literally bought just 2 days ago. Gone. I checked the freezer too. Same story. Now I knew for a fact it wasn't my parents. They don't eat like that. And obviously, it wasn't me. So that only left one option. Ethan and Chloe. They must have helped themselves to everything without even asking. I was already annoyed, but I tried to let it go, telling myself I'd just pick up more groceries the next day. But it didn't stop there. When I went to sit down at the table, my mom walked into the kitchen, avoiding eye contact completely. She quietly started making plates. For herself, my dad, Ethan, and Chloe. And then, she didn't make one for me. At first, I thought maybe she just forgot, so I stood there for a second, waiting. But no. She finished serving everyone else and sat down like nothing was wrong. And there I was, just standing there like an idiot, watching them all start eating. I'm not gonna lie, that hit me hard. I could feel the anger building again, fast. It felt like they were all punishing me just because I stood up for myself. I looked at my mom, trying to stay calm. You didn't make me a plate? She barely even looked up. If you don't want to help the family, you don't eat with the family, she said, like she was commenting on the weather. I honestly couldn't believe it. Excuse me, I said. I pay for everything here. The groceries, the mortgage, and now you're just icing me out? She didn't respond. My dad just sighed and kept eating like nothing was happening, which somehow made it even worse. And Ethan and Chloe? They were sitting there looking smug, like they'd just won some kind of game. Chloe even smiled at me as I walked past. That was it. I was done. I slammed the fridge door shut and walked out of the kitchen, my mind racing. I already knew what I was going to do next. I went straight to my room, grabbed my laptop, and started looking up eviction notices. If they didn't want to show me basic respect, then they could go find somewhere else to live. Enough was enough. I'm not running a free hotel. Within about an hour, I had everything ready. I printed out 2 sets, one for Ethan and Chloe, and one for my parents. I'll be honest, it felt strange kicking out my own family. But at that point, they had pushed things way too far. For weeks, they'd been disrespecting me, acting like the house was theirs, and now they were freezing me out because I wouldn't give in to their ridiculous demands. I wasn't putting up with it anymore. Once the papers were ready, I walked into the living room where they were all sitting, acting like everything was fine. I didn't say a word. I just dropped the papers in front of my parents, then handed the other set to Ethan and Chloe. What's this? Ethan asked, picking them up and skimming through. You have 24 hours to pack your things and leave, I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could. If you're not out by tomorrow, I'm calling the police. Ethan's face went pale instantly. He clearly wasn't expecting that. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm serious, I said. I'm done with this. You've been freeloading here, contributing nothing, and now you think you can take over my house. Not anymore. Ethan stood up, glaring at me, but I didn't move. I'm bigger than him, taller than him, and I wasn't about to be intimidated. We're family, he said through clenched teeth. You can't just throw us out. Yes, I can, I replied, stepping closer. I'm the one paying for this house. Not you, not Chloe, and not Mom and Dad. If you can't respect me, you don't get to stay here. Of course, Chloe started crying, like that was supposed to change anything. I'm pregnant, and you're kicking us out? What kind of brother are you? I'm the brother who's been paying for everything while you two take advantage of me. I shot back. You've got 24 hours. That's more than fair. Ethan looked like he wanted to keep arguing, but I could see it in his face. It was starting to sink in. I wasn't bluffing. My mom, who had been quiet this whole time, finally spoke up. You can't do this, honey. They're your brother and sister-in-law. This is family. But I was past caring. I already did, I said, pointing at the notice in her hands. You've got 45 days to find somewhere else to. And if you're still here after that, I'll take legal action. The room went completely silent. My dad didn't say a word, just stared at the table like he didn't know what to do. My mom looked like she was about to cry, but I wasn't backing down. This wasn't about being nice anymore. This was about finally standing up for myself. After a few long, heavy minutes, I turned around and walked back to my room, leaving them to deal with it. I locked the door, sat down at my desk, and took a deep breath. I had just done something I never thought I'd have to do. I kicked out my own family. But you know what? It felt right. I wasn't going to let anyone take advantage of me ever again. The house stayed completely quiet for the rest of the night. No one knocked on my door. No one argued. I think they finally realized I wasn't playing around anymore. If they couldn't respect me, they didn't deserve to live here. And honestly, I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Update 1. After handing out those eviction notices, I figured one of 2 things would happen. Either everything would explode, or they'd finally take me seriously and back off. Either way, I knew there was no going back. I'd drawn a line, and I wasn't letting anyone cross it again. But instead of some big blow-up, the house went quiet. Too quiet, honestly. The next morning, I woke up early, earlier than usual. I hadn't slept much, just lying there waiting for something to happen. I half expected Ethan to come banging on my door, demanding I take it back. or my parents to start pleading with me to reconsider. But nothing. When I finally got up and walked into the kitchen to make breakfast, it was empty. No one else was awake yet. No Ethan. No Chloe. No parents. For a second, I actually thought, maybe they packed up in the middle of the night and just left without saying anything. But yeah, that was just wishful thinking. I made myself some coffee, sat down at the table, and waited. I wasn't in the mood for small talk, and I definitely wasn't about to explain myself all over again. What I did, it was necessary. They'd pushed me way too far, and there was no way I could keep living like that. They didn't respect me, and they definitely didn't respect the fact that I was the one paying for everything. All I wanted was basic decency, and somehow, even that was too much for them. After a while, my mom finally walked into the kitchen. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept at all. At first, she didn't say anything. She just grabbed a cup of coffee and sat down across from me. This was the first time we'd been alone since I handed her the eviction notice. And the silence? It just hung there, heavy and awkward. It felt like forever before she finally spoke. "Honey," she said softly, her voice tired. "I know things have gotten out of hand." I didn't respond. I just stared down at my coffee, waiting for whatever was coming next. I figured there'd be an apology, or at least something close to one. But I wasn't about to let her off that easily. "I didn't realize how bad things had gotten between you and your brother," she continued, her voice cracking just a little. "We were just trying to help them, and I guess I didn't see how unfair it was to you." That actually caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting her to admit that, especially not this soon. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, she was finally starting to understand that I wasn't the bad guy here. But even then, I couldn't shake the frustration. "You didn't just ignore what I wanted," I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. "You sided with them every single time, like you just assumed I'd roll over and let them take whatever they wanted." "I know," she said quietly, almost under her breath. "But we thought, well, you've always been the strong one. Ethan, he's never had it easy." There it was. That same excuse they always used. Ethan struggled more. Ethan needed more help. Ethan deserved more support. Meanwhile, I guess I was just expected to handle everything because I had my life together. "And you think I've had it easy?" I asked, my frustration rising again. "I'm the one who bought this house. I'm the one paying the mortgage. I pay for the groceries. I've been carrying all of you. And you think I can just keep doing that forever?" She looked down at her coffee, staying quiet for a few seconds. "I know you've done a lot," she said eventually. "More than we could have ever asked for. But Ethan, with the baby coming." I cut her off. "This isn't about the baby," I said firmly. "This is about respect. And none of you have shown me any." She let out a long sigh, like the whole situation had drained her. But I wasn't about to let it slide with a few tired excuses. "We just thought we were doing the right thing," she said after a moment. "Ethan and Chloe, they don't have much. And whose fault is that?" I shot back. "I didn't ask them to move in. I didn't ask for any of this. They need to figure out their own lives. You can't keep bailing them out by throwing me under the bus." She nodded slowly, like it was finally starting to sink in, or at least she was trying to understand. "We'll figure something out," she said quietly. "But please, don't push us out. Not like this." I leaned back in my chair, trying to calm myself down. It's not like I wanted to kick them out. They're my parents. But at the same time, I couldn't keep living in a house where my boundaries didn't matter. I'd let way too much slide already. And now, I had to draw the line. "I don't want to push you out," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "But things have to change. I can't keep living like this, being treated like I don't matter in my own home. Either things change, or yeah, you'll have to find somewhere else." She didn't argue. She just nodded. "Okay," she said quietly. "We'll figure something out." Then she got up and left the kitchen, leaving me alone with my thoughts again. I wasn't sure if anything would actually change. But at least now, it felt like they were finally starting to take me seriously. Ethan and Chloe still hadn't shown their faces. And honestly, I didn't know if that was a good sign or a bad one. Either way, their time was running out. Later that afternoon, Ethan finally came out. And yeah, he looked like he'd been stewing over everything from the night before. He didn't even say hi, just walked into the living room and sat down across from me, wearing that same pissed-off expression he always gets when things don't go his way. "So this is how it's going to be?" he said, his voice full of bitterness. "You're really kicking us out." "I gave you 24 hours, I said, not even looking up from my phone. If you're still here tomorrow, I'm calling the police. He scoffed, shaking his head like I was the villain. We're family. Yeah, I shot back, and family doesn't take advantage of each other. You've had weeks to figure this out. I'm not your backup plan. After that, he didn't have much to say. He just sat there for a minute, then got up and stormed off, like always. That's Ethan. When things don't go his way, he doesn't deal with it. He just walks away. The rest of the day passed quietly. Too quietly, if I'm being honest. I had no idea what Ethan and Chloe were planning, but one thing was certain, I wasn't changing my mind. I gave them a clear deadline, and they knew I wasn't bluffing. The next 24 hours were going to decide everything. Update 2. The next morning, after everything that had happened, I woke up and just lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling. I knew this was it. The deadline was here. Ethan and Chloe had 24 hours, and now that time was almost up. But weirdly enough, I wasn't even angry anymore. I'd already accepted what needed to happen. At this point, it wasn't about emotion. It was about following through. When I got up and walked into the kitchen, I noticed something right away. The house felt different. Not tense, just quiet. Like that eerie calm before something big happens. No one else was in the kitchen, so I made myself some breakfast. The fridge was still pretty empty after Ethan and Chloe basically wiped it out, but I managed with what was left. As I sat there eating, I started thinking about how fast everything had spiraled. It really hadn't been that long ago that things were fine. My parents and I were getting along. I was working, paying the mortgage, covering groceries. Life was just normal. And then Ethan and Chloe showed up, and everything fell apart. It's honestly crazy how quickly things can change when people start feeling entitled to things they didn't earn. A couple of hours later, I heard someone coming down the hallway. It was my dad. He walked into the kitchen quietly, poured himself a cup of coffee, and sat down across from me. At first, he didn't say anything, just took a sip and stared out the window like he was gathering his thoughts. Then finally, he spoke. Ethan and Chloe are leaving today. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure if he was telling me because they'd decided to leave on their own, or if he was just reminding me that the deadline had come. Either way, I just nodded and kept eating. They don't really have anywhere to go, he added, his voice low. They're going to stay at a motel for a bit, until they figure things out. I paused mid-bite and looked up at him. Yeah, a small part of me felt bad hearing that. But the bigger part of me knew this is exactly what needed to happen. I'd been too accommodating for too long. If I didn't stand my ground now, they'd just keep pushing and taking more. I gave them time, I said calmly. I didn't want it to come to this, but they didn't leave me a choice. He didn't argue, didn't try to guilt me, which honestly surprised me. He just nodded and took another sip of his coffee. I think, finally, he understood that I wasn't backing down this time. After everything that had happened, there was no going back to how things were before. Around noon, I could hear Ethan and Chloe starting to pack. I stayed in my room for most of it. I wasn't interested in another argument or dealing with more passive-aggressive comments. But after a while, I could hear Ethan's voice getting louder down the hall. So yeah, I knew it was only a matter of time. Sure enough, a few minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there he was, same angry expression he'd been wearing since I handed him the eviction notice. "You're really going to let this happen?" he asked sharply. "You're seriously kicking us out like this?" I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "I gave you 24 hours, I said. I told you exactly what needed to happen." He shook his head, jaw tight. "We're family, man. You don't do this to family." I took a slow breath, keeping my voice steady. Family doesn't take advantage of each other. I'm not kicking you out for no reason. You've been living here for weeks without contributing anything. I've been paying for everything. The house, the groceries, all of it. And instead of appreciating that, you try to take my room and push me out of my own house. I'm not letting that happen. He didn't say anything right away. I could tell he was angry, but there wasn't much left for him to argue. Deep down, he knew I was right, even if he didn't want to admit it. "So that's it," he muttered after a few seconds. "You're just throwing us out?" "I'm giving you the same option I gave you yesterday," I replied. "You can go find your own place, or you can stay in the guest room and actually respect me and my space. But if you can't do that, then yeah, you're leaving." Ethan just stared at me for a second, then turned around and walked off without another word. I closed the door and let out a long breath. It was exhausting, but it had to be done. By mid-afternoon, they were gone. I didn't watch them leave, and honestly, I didn't want to. I wasn't looking for some emotional goodbye or anything like that. They packed their stuff, loaded it into their car, and drove off without saying a word to me. And just like that, it was over. The house felt different almost immediately. Quieter, lighter, like all that tension that had been building for weeks just disappeared. My parents didn't say much to me that day. I think they were still trying to process everything. My mom looked upset, but she didn't argue. Maybe, finally, she understood that I wasn't the one who caused all this. Ethan and Chloe pushed things too far, and this was the result. That evening, my mom knocked on my door. She came in slowly, sat down on the edge of my bed, and just stared at the floor for a while. I could tell she was trying to figure out what to say. "They're gone," she said quietly. I nodded, staying silent. "I never thought it would get to this," she admitted. "I didn't realize how much pressure we were putting on you." I looked at her, feeling some of that frustration start to fade. "It's not that I didn't want to help," I said. "But you guys treated me like I didn't matter, like my needs and my space didn't count." She sighed and nodded. "You're right. We should have seen it sooner." We sat there in silence for a few minutes. She still looked upset, but at least now, it felt like she was starting to understand where I was coming from. "I don't want you and Dad to leave," I said finally, breaking the silence. "But if things don't change, I can't live like this." She nodded again and slowly stood up. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Things will be different. I promise." As she walked out of the room, I felt this strange mix of relief and exhaustion. The situation with Ethan and Chloe was over, but there was still work to do when it came to my parents. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but at least now, it felt like they were finally willing to listen. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could actually breathe again. The house was quiet. The tension was gone. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a start. I had my space back. And more importantly, I had my respect.